particularly when I layer in the whole part about Meta's changes that will continue to come around AI and automating a lot of these processes for us and pushing all of the users who advertise on Meta towards more automated campaigns. You're going to need to be far more, like I said, a bit more hands-off as far as this is just my advertising budget. I know my objectives behind it. I know my goals behind it. I have these measures in place to capture these users after the fact. So I'm going to push towards the best quality traffic I can afford. Hey, welcome to Aussie Online Growing on Shopify. This is episode 126, and I want to talk about why cheap traffic isn't always good traffic. And that might seem like a given. You might be pretty well on the side of that's true. You think, well, cheap traffic is often terrible traffic. But sometimes when we look inside Ads Manager for ourselves, if you advertise on Meta, or for when I speak to clients, you can sort of fundamentally understand that's probably the case, but then sort of get a little caught up in, but what's the cost per click, or how many clicks am I getting for that budget? So we can sometimes find we default back to thinking that maybe cheap traffic is still good quality traffic when often cheap traffic isn't good quality traffic. So I want to talk today about what is good quality traffic and sort of about try and help us trying to be a bit more reasonable with our understanding and expectations of Meta. If you advertise on Meta, or if you have thinking about advertising on Meta, then your expectations around traffic and what you can sort of expect to pay for it. So fundamentally, this episode is about, am I paying for clicks or am I paying for customers? And if you're in e-commerce, you want to be paying for customers, which come from clicks. They're definitely linked. There's no getting away from that. But you don't want to get caught up in the cost per click and thinking about how to reduce that amount, when the other side of that is really but you want to be paying for customers. So really, the cost per click as a metric all on its own is a bit of rubbish and doesn't really mean a whole lot at all, unless you're looking at the whole health of an ad account or your own ad account and looking at the other points of data and in your Google Analytics account as well to also kind of get a bit of a backup for that data. So in this episode, I want to share with you why I don't like to focus on cheap traffic. And if you are, then it might be holding you back in a few different ways. I'm going to share a few of those different ways with you this morning. First of all, let me take you behind the scenes of a campaign that I ran for myself recently, which was around my subscription box launch. And last week's episode 125, was also about my subscription box launch and how well it went. I was really happy with the result, how many new subscribers I got, the cost of the budget for the whole campaign, and my conversion rate on that as well. I was really thrilled. So it was a huge success for me as far as I'm concerned. But one specific stat I don't think I shared with you in that episode last week that I really think is interesting and critical, it kind of is the whole point of this week's episode, even though it's only one little metric, is the cost of leads. So when I go and look at how much I spent for my subscription box launch through March 2025, I spent $800 across warm audiences and cold audiences, initially building a waitlist. Half that budget went to building a waitlist prior to the open cart. Then the rest of that budget went to looking for purchasers and subscribers, new reoccurring revenue customers as well. These are not just single standalone orders. These are subscription box customers. Then the other half of the budget went to looking for those afterwards, after the cart was open. And I want to share with you that each lead that I paid for on Meta, which got me all the way from them seeing the ad to my landing page to signing up to my landing page successfully. In other words, they appeared in Klaviyo, they appeared in my email list, my special, subscription box launch wait list email list, was $7 for each of those leads. $7 to get one lead from Meta. That's not $1 per click, hey? It's definitely more than what maybe the default people expect to pay for a click or a lead or something from Meta is $1. Surely $1 seems reasonable, right? But often $1 is not reasonable anymore anyway. $1 per lead was probably reasonable a few years ago, but not anymore, not in 2025. So $7 I paid for one lead on Meta. Not even a conversion, hey, not even a customer, not a purchase, not an add to cart, Nothing like that. Just a lead, looking for an email address from a prospective potential customer who might want to become a subscriber to my subscription box. So that's when I looked at that individual metric on its own, I was a little taken aback. That was definitely higher than I had even thought it was going to be, because the metrics inside Meta in the campaigns are far less when I look at how much it cost me to sort of get the person to the website. But that data is not accurate. We all know that. You can't rely on Meta's data to be accurate across the board at all. And people then, when they land on a landing page, got to stay around long enough, read it, scroll down, sign up, and successfully, enter their correct details and end up in my Klaviyo waitlist. So $7 a lead it cost me, which is certainly more than maybe $1 per click, or like $1 per link click, or if that's a metric you've often been looking at, then $7 you would probably freak out about and be pretty convinced that that was a terrible campaign. But the end of the story is that it wasn't a terrible campaign. The end of the story is, when I actually look at the metrics across the board at the end of the launch, is I got a 20% conversion rate on this group of leads that I collected from Meta. When I look at all the leads I collected on Meta for $7 per lead, and I put them all through Klaviyo, and they all got some emails from me about the open cart, 20% of them converted to become a subscription box customer with me in my small e-commerce store. 20%. So that's the end of the story. So if I'd come to you midway through my waitlist growth and given you some metrics of how things were going, and I told you that each lead was costing me $7, I might have even freaked out a little bit, being like, what? That's pretty high. But there was a plan to this money being spent to begin with. You've got to see it to the end. Got to see it to the end. Got to decide what budget you want to spend and see it to the end. Because particularly if you're growing a waitlist towards some sort of open cart or launch, you actually don't know till the other side. I guess that's really scary when I think about it, even just saying it out loud. Now, that is one of the scary things about a launch of some description or any description, is that these results don't come till far later. So you really have to trust the process, and you really need to be confident in your own strategy and your ability and Meta with campaign builds and objectives and creatives to trust that you will see a result at the other end, which I did. So I was obviously really happy about that. So these weren't just random clicks. These were real customers. So these are the sort of customers that stick around. So you can be confident of that. If you are running campaigns in Meta at the moment and your objective is pretty bottom of the funnel, like pretty purchase intent, even viewed content or add to cart or initiate checkout or purchase, like any of the salesy objectives, and you're seeing some costs per landing page view, not landing page view, but does that make sense? If you're sort of getting people to a wait list or to your email, and you think maybe you're paying a bit too much for each of these email addresses or each of these sign-ups of some description, you might be, but perhaps you're also not. Like, there are more people advertising on Meta now than ever before. Costs keep going up year on year. They're going up quite a lot. Like, if I dream back to the days of stroll down memory lane of advertising on Meta in 2020, late 2020, when I was advertising on Meta, and many of you may have been as well, then we would turn a campaign on, and if it didn't start performing in 5 hours, it got turned off. That's how quickly it could perform and how responsive Meta was. And everybody was at home on their phones as well, shopping. And I remember getting sales and purchases for $5 each. It's like, I just didn't know how good I had it then, which is the case all the time. So yeah, I didn't know how good I had it then, because it's very different now. But it's the same all the time. We never know how good we've got it at the time, because it's always going to get trickier and more complex. And you've just got to stick with it and roll with it and work it out. So yeah, $5 a purchase I was getting in 2020, which is pretty crazy. What's the very next step for your small business in growing online here in Australia? Often things like email marketing or Facebook ads are things that small businesses come up against often that can be really costly to solve and really hard to find someone that you trust to look after those projects. I work with small online businesses here in Australia on those two very things. They dovetail together so well. They support each other so well. In my own e-commerce store in 2024, 36% of all of my revenue came directly from email marketing efforts. And my total revenue across the year was up 30% on 2023. So I am perfectly placed to support you in growing online with your very next steps. I've sort of been told I am the small budget or baby budget Facebook ad specialist, and I totally endorse that and embrace it. I love that title. If you want to work on Facebook ads, I can work with a small budget or a large budget. Or if you want to work on email marketing inside Klaviyo or another CRM, I can build flows and segments for you to ensure your deliverability remains strong, because no one wants to end up in a spam folder that stops us from sending emails. Reach out to me for a free discovery call. You can put it right in my calendar and we can talk for 25 minutes about your business and how I'm best placed to support you for a 30-day project window. You don't need to sign up to a long, expensive retainer. We can work together one-on-one just for a small period of time to begin with on a specific project to see how well we work together and see what results I can get you and your business next. Now back to the episode. If you look inside your Google Analytics account, you'll often see that the results in there back up the fact that you really want to be paying for good quality traffic on Meta and not junky traffic on Meta. Because this is a little tip. If you look inside Google Analytics and you filter by the average engagement time on site, if you look at the last, 90 days or 30 days of your data, do you know if somebody was on your website for about 10 seconds, it's probably pretty good. But what can you do in 10 seconds? Very little. But that same campaign in Meta may be a high performing campaign. So you might be getting high performing results on Meta side, but then you look in Google Analytics and you see that this person was on your website for 10 seconds and you think that that's useless, but it's actually not useless. 10 seconds is actually not bad with Google Analytics metric when you pair that with looking at what the engagement rate of the same campaign was. So if the engagement rate on that same campaign was 30%, also not bad. A room for improvement for sure. Can I get someone to stay on my website longer than 10 seconds? Can I get a better engagement rate with Google Analytics than 30%? Yeah, for sure you definitely can. But it doesn't mean that a campaign is terrible. That's actually not a bad metric as far as GA4 is concerned. So Meta says it's amazing because it's a high performing campaign. So you think, this is great. These are great results. And you look in GA4 and you might be really disappointed if you see that there's only a 30% engagement rate from that campaign, or people are on your website for 11 seconds. But that's actually pretty good. So if you see those two things together, it's actually pretty good. And in Meta, on Meta's side of it, if you're using a viewed content objective or an add to cart or initiate checkout or any of those things, if you're using viewed content, which is about my favorite apart from purchase, viewed content is probably one of my favorite sales pushing objectives apart from purchase. I do quite like viewed content. Viewed content I like because if you're plugging the leaky bucket, you have a pop-up and a welcome flow and you're emailing often, that's actually a pretty good combination to be able to reach out to these people ongoing and capture many of the people that are going to never buy anything, but they've landed on your website. So viewed content is a valuable objective in my opinion when it's in a structure with other things, of course. But I'd encourage you to try viewed content if you haven't before, and then look inside Google Analytics at the same campaign. And if that campaign is getting you people on your website for about 10 seconds and an engagement rate of about 30%, it's actually doing pretty well. So maybe that will help some of you. Maybe you look thinking, I don't know, what metrics do I even look at? Is that even good? As a standalone campaign, without obviously looking at any of your other campaigns or your objectives overall, but just that one piece of the puzzle, that's actually not bad. So your cost per purchase is about your average order value now in 2025 is not bad. I wouldn't like that myself. I don't like, if I get a campaign with an average order value, I tend to turn it off because I can do better. I do this a lot, so that's sort of what I do. But if you're only advertising sporadically on Meta or you don't very often and you do have a campaign for purchase that gets you a result for about your average order value, that is not terrible, which is why I bang on about so much about the leaky bucket. Because, okay, let's say that's a good result and you want to leave that campaign running for a month and you think, great, but all the people who've come to your website because of that campaign, what other measures did you have to capture them? How will you find these people or reach out to them again? Do you have a pop-up or a welcome flow, or are you emailing them every week? Because there's ways to mitigate the cost of that campaign on Meta, because that's an expensive campaign to run. I'm not saying it's not. Like, that's an expensive exercise to get one result on Meta for your average order value. I'm not disputing that at all. That's a rough metric to swallow. So we need to be plugging the leaky bucket. We need to have measures to make sure that this quality traffic we're choosing to drive, if we're going to choose to drive quality traffic, we want to make sure that we've got measures to collect this quality traffic when they don't convert the first time they come, which is most of them. That's likely to be most of them. So let me look here. Oh, the other thing I'll say too about viewed content is, if you're wondering, I guess I was sort of talking about what you could expect to see inside GA4, but on Meta, if you've got a viewed content campaign running, then if you're paying between 60 cents and maybe $1.20 per viewed content result, that's also not bad. So there's your dollar, there's your dollar per click, is a viewed content result of between 60 cents and about $1.20, is not a terrible result. You could totally do testing to improve that 100%. But it's not that bad. It's actually not a terrible result. And you know, when I think back to my stat at the top of this episode, which is each of the leads I got from Meta cost me $7 per lead, not even a sale, just a potential customer, a potential yes was $7. That might be applicable to some of you who are in a service-based industry like I am with my podcast, but you could expect to pay a whole lot for a lead, because you have potentially got a huge tail, what's the word? Tail effect? Long tail effect, long tail revenue off of that customer. So if you have a program that you're looking to sign clients up for that might be $1,000, then oh my goodness, how much would you expect to pay for a lead, and then see that lead convert at the other end? So your leads, my average order, my subscription box I'm looking for customers to sign up to is a monthly commitment. So it's a pretty hefty commitment. So $7 per lead is a lot, but it's also for a hefty commitment. But if you have a really high value product, I don't know, cars or something, or you have a service and you're looking for leads and you have clients that come to you month after month or buy a program, then how much do leads cost you? Because if you're looking for $1 per click, I, I fear you are probably setting yourself up to fail, rather than setting your expectations a little more reasonably and then working towards some testing to see how well you go. The last thing I want to share with you before I go is that if you're a little shy to run some money towards some heavy purchase conversion, bottom of the funnel type intent traffic, then instead of junky traffic, so instead of going too far up the funnel and running just landing page traffic, for instance, to your website, which I'm just not sure it's going to get you any decent results that you can be comfortable and happy with. You'll just see a heap of bots and a heap of traffic to your website that doesn't even stay there for a second. It might be 0 seconds. If you want to spend money on some traffic, but you want to not spend the sort of budget you need to in bottom of the funnel, this is what I suggest you do. And this is what I suggest my clients do with a very small budget, is flip it completely and put most of your budget towards on platform engagement. So you run an engagement campaign and you run a video views campaign on Meta. And that's where you collect the data. You want people engaging on Meta, watching your videos on Meta. Then you use a small retargeting budget and you retarget those audiences yourself. Not very often though, because frequency creeps up really high, but you retarget those audiences yourself with a more bottom of the funnel campaign like viewed content or purchase or leads if you're looking at service in a retargeted fashion. That's the only way I would suggest, if you have a very small budget and you don't want to increase it to spend it towards higher quality traffic, but you still want to be on Meta in some capacity growing your business. You absolutely can, but you need to flip sort of your thought overall, or your strategy overall, and spend a lot of your budget on the platform activity, and then retarget those users in a very small, low spending campaign, and then lean heavily on recapturing a lot of that data in your email marketing to reach those people in email down the track. So there are ways around it, but don't sort of just go for the traffic objective thinking it's going to get you good quality traffic. Maybe it will, but if it hasn't, then this might be why. Are you optimizing your pixel and your ad account overall, towards what your business really needs. Are you optimizing your ad account overall towards purchase because you're in e-commerce? Because if you're not, then you should be leaning more heavily into that to make sure ad account continues to perform that way. Particularly when I layer in the whole part about Meta's changes that will continue to come around AI and automating a lot of these processes for us and pushing all of the users who advertise on Meta towards more automated campaigns. You're going to need to be far more, like I said, a bit more hands off as far as this is just my advertising budget. I know my objectives behind it. I know my goals behind it. I have these measures in place to capture these users after the fact. So I'm going to push towards the best quality traffic I can afford and then lean on and trust that I'll be able to capture these leads in another way and these potential customers in another way and convert them later on if you can't afford to be spending $100 a day. So I hope this was a bit of an episode that was a bit about traffic and maybe our expectations around traffic. Maybe I blew your mind the same way it blew my mind just with the stat on how much a lead cost me, an email address to get into my Klaviyo waitlist in my recent subscription box launch. I'm so glad it ended really well. My subscription box launch went so well. If you haven't listened to last week's episode, go check it out now. It's all about my subscription box launch. So I'm thrilled to see how well it panned out for me. And I do love that about Meta. It continues to get me great quality leads, great quality potential customers. So I will continue to pay for the highest quality, best quality traffic I can. And I encourage you to consider doing the same if you get a little bit too caught up with what the cost per click is and looking for maybe a volume of sessions on your website, but without any measures in place to really go and check out that traffic for yourself in GA4 and see what that traffic is really actually doing. Is it really good quality traffic or is it really just junky traffic? Remember, we want to pay for customers and not clicks. Like customers are our ultimate goal, not just the clicks. So that's today's episode. As always, we are the CEO of our business and the driver of our steam train. I like to think of my business as a little steam train chugging along, the little engine that could up hills and through valleys and all that sort of stuff and through tunnels. And I think I need to park it and have a little bit of a rest this afternoon after my launch and everything. I can tell you I'm pretty well whacked. I'll see you guys next time. As always, keep learning.